Hi, we're hitting the home stretch in the class and heading into project 4, the research proposal. This project is basically what you've been building up to the whole semester. After looking at examples of researched, published work, and then working on developing a literature review of a particular topic and discussion of that topic in your discourse community. Now you're going to put some of those pieces together and bring some of that knowledge to Project 4, where you're going to be working through a few key steps to show where there's a need for research in your discourse community and how you're going to fill that need responding to the research questions that you've developed in proposing a study. So today I'm going to talk to you about a few things that will get us started on Project 4. One, reminding you how the work you've done through the semester will help you build this proposal for a study, and we'll take a look in a moment at the assignment prompt for Project 4. Two, thinking about how to use Swale's CARS method, which is referenced in that assignment prompt, to prepare for Project 4. And then talking about some of the other steps that you'll take to develop your research proposal. We won't go from just nothing to a fully fleshed out research proposal. Instead, we'll work on several steps of research and feedback, like you've done in previous projects, to get you ready for this final submission. In the Project 4 folder, which will take us from this week, week 10, through week 13, you'll see the assignment description for the research proposal. And in this assignment description, like with others, there are several reiterations of the purpose and the steps that you'll take for this project. I want to focus right now just on the assignment prompt section. And I'm going to talk through that and add some thoughts where necessary. I think sometimes we don't take enough time to read through assignment prompts, kind of just skimming them to get the basic idea. But it would be important as you go through this project, especially these first couple weeks, to go back to the assignment prompt every few days or every time you sit down to annotate the assignment prompt, just to think about the kinds of tasks that you're expected to do. So I'm going to read through this starting right here, right now. This project is compiled from several smaller, low-stakes assignments. In this class, those will be built into blogs and drafts of things. First, drawing upon previous projects, you will draft an introduction to produce a rationale for your literature review and proposal. Okay, so the first step of this research proposal process is writing the introduction, and we'll turn in just a moment to John Swale's CARS model and also to an example to think about how you'll draft an intro that will set up why this literature review is important and why your research proposal is important. Okay, step 2. Second, once an introduction has been formulated, you will revise your literature review. Okay, so you might have noticed in my comments on your project for final submissions, those comments are geared toward revising the literature review. So I did not comment as if that was a complete done project. Everything is situated as you're moving forward into integrating this into Project 4. So that's how you should think about my comments on your Project 3 literature reviews, as now you're going to take that lit review and shape it even further to place it in its position in the research proposal. So you're going to revise that to A, further analyze whether your research provides adequate background on the research on the subject. So you're going to have to do some thinking here. Have you done enough research to establish a need or to establish the appropriate background? And if you haven't, you're going to have to do a little bit more research, which is okay. And B, show how your research problem, the thing that you see is missing or needs to be done, fills a gap in the scholarship in that field and fits into ongoing conversations about the problem or issue. Third, you will draw upon your already gathered research materials in order to propose a mock methodology for addressing your research problem. The proposal must be at least semi-realistic, meaning manageable and possible, must include methodology appropriate to your discourse community, and must indicate how you would implement your methodology using discipline-specific methods. Okay, so this is the part that'll take some breaking down, and we'll start looking at methodology and methods in week 11. But the words mock and semi-realistic are in this language here because while we'll be writing a research proposal, and while some of you might propose research methods that you actually can accomplish in the scope of this semester, our endpoint will really be that you will finish the class with a ready-to-go research proposal. There is not an expectation that you actually conduct that research within the remaining weeks of this semester. Studies take a lot more time to get approved, to conduct, and then to do the analysis of, and then do final write-ups of, than what we can do in a few weeks. So you're proposing this as if you will actually play out the proposal, thinking, especially for many of you, is this a project that I could actually do in a writing intensive class, in my major, or for some other future possible research that I'd like to do, so that I'm kind of ready to go with a good draft of a research proposal at that point. So we'll talk about methods and methodology in week 11. Finally, you'll develop a discussion section where you discuss the limitations, assumptions, validations, and significance of your research proposal for your discourse community and the discipline at large. So we'll break down when we get to that point, after we've done some revision of the introduction and literature review, what is meant by limitations, assumptions, validations, and significance. But right now what I'll say is that it's important to address in the discussion section what this study does show, what it can show, what it can't show because of the way that the study is framed, why it's valuable. So you're going to be doing a lot of proving of what will be useful about this project. Okay, so some of the major requirements for this project: your research proposal will be 10 to 15 pages long. A good portion of that will be the introduction and the literature review. The literature review you've already written, but for most of you, that will be significantly revised as we move it into Project 4. You're also going to show the common genre characteristics and structures of academic and professional proposals, and we'll talk about those here and a little bit when we look at the CARS model in a moment. It's going to include these major sections. There's a lot of work happening in the introduction. You're going to show what the problem is, give a rationale for your research proposal and your research questions, provide key definitions, and then also later move into the literature review. The proposal that you make for a research study and the methodology you describe should be common in the discipline and supported with references to secondary literature. So some of this is stuff that you've already uncovered in your research guide or that you've noticed in your genre analysis. A handful of you have discussed potential methods in either Project 3A or 3B or both, but that's just a few of you. So for many of you, you're going to need to be thinking ahead this week about what kinds of studies are done, how are those studies done, what is an acceptable research method in my field. But like I mentioned earlier, we'll talk about methods and methodology more in week 11. And then you're going to include discussion and conclusion sections. Now again, because you're not actually conducting this research, this discussion will not be a discussion of results of the research, but instead what the limitations, assumptions, validation, and significance of the research is. So I've made a few references to John Swale's CARS model, and this link is in your reading for week 10. There are three major moves that Swales describes as happening in the introductions of research proposals. And so these are the things that I'll expect to see you doing as you draft your introduction this week. The first move that you need to make is establishing a territory. And again, you're not necessarily doing all of these things, though you might be. So one of those moves is to claim the importance of your study. Why is this valuable? Another move might be to make some generalizations about the topic. So this is like what's happening overall in the field or around this issue. And that step 2 is a move that many of you have made so far in your lit reviews, but you could better substantiate that with references to specific examples or by citing where you're getting those topic generalizations from. You also might review items of previous research where you look at a couple of key writers in the field and what they've said about the topic. So these first 3 moves are, you could do all of them, you could do one major of those moves. That's kind of up to you and it depends on your topic. The next thing that you need to do is establish a niche. This is like where you're going to put your foot in the door of this topic and make a statement and where your research is going to contribute. So you're showing like, here's this little thing that hasn't been done yet, or here's a thing we should really think about, or here's something that while all of these other aspects have been considered, this piece is still not looked at in the research. So you might provide a counterclaim, where you say, well, all of these authors make this argument, I see a potential other argument. Indicating a gap, that would be where you see something that hasn't specifically been studied yet. Raising questions about what has been studied before, or continuing to do the kinds of research that have been done but in a new context or with new information in mind. That would be 1D. So the niche will fit into one of these 4 categories. So think about how you're going to show a need for this research. And then finally, you want to show how you're going to occupy that niche by outlining the purposes of your research, announcing things that are happening right now, announcing principal findings, or indicating the article structure. So these are 3 major moves that you will make here. Now, for you, because you're not actually conducting principal findings, here it would be, here's my research question, here's what the purpose of my research, and then I keep talking about in my comments on your lit reviews a map. So the map that you provide will here not be just of your lit review, but also of what the entire text is doing. And you could look at examples of the articles that you read for your genre analysis to see how they do that article structuring. I want to take just a few minutes to talk you through a section of a research proposal that a colleague and I submitted to the Wayne State Institutional Review Board several years ago for what has been an approved study that we are working on analysis and writing, drafting articles for right now. But I want to show you this so that you can see how some of these moves look in a research proposal for a study of a composition course, and so that you can see more than a student example, though there is a student sample posted in your materials for this week. It might make sense as I talk through this if you pause the video so you can read through the paragraphs as we're looking at them. But one of the things, or a few of the moves that are key in this first paragraph are the introduction of the subject of the proposal. So that's one of the things mentioned in Chapter 3 in the Writing a Research Proposal section that you'll read this week. Just write up from the beginning, what is the study looking at? Community and collaborative practices. And not just what is it looking at, but where is it examining these things? So we identified that this was going to be looked at in a section of basic writing and a section of introductory college writing. Okay, we also want to explain the significance of the project. And so one of the moves that we make is to build on scholarship in the field of composition in order to look at concepts of students seeing themselves as knowledge makers, which is how one of the authors that we cite talks about it. We wanted to look at issues in collaborative learning. We also wanted to look at how students write about their learning experiences in reflection. So we're drawing from 3 major threads in composition studies in our project. We also talk about how this is going to play out. What are our research questions? What do we want to know? Why is this important for our composition program? So we wanted to look not just at why this was helpful for the field, but why this was helpful very locally for what we do in WSU composition. And down here, we have our research questions. This was a teacher research study, so we're going to talk about methodology next week. Teacher research is one of the methods used in composition studies, where teachers take field notes on their classes, collect all student work, and analyze student texts, and conduct interviews with students, and play out all sorts of research methods to learn as much as they can about the class that they're teaching. There will be research methods that are valued in your fields as well, so you want to pay attention to what those are. And here in this second to last paragraph before research questions is where we talked a little bit about the data, about how our methods and how data would be collected. So this section would actually probably come later in your research proposal. But it was important as we put together this research proposal that we position how this idea, how our idea for what we wanted to study comes from things that have been written before, what our goals were, and how we wanted to play those things out through our research. Your writing assignment for this week is to write blog 7, where you're going to introduce your topic, define some key terms, cite key sources, kind of like you saw me doing with the Wenger and Brophy and Yancey texts that my colleague and I cite in the beginning of our research proposal introduction. A research objective, there should be a clear statement where it's like, this is what I want to get out of this research, and a roadmap of the literature review at least. You won't necessarily know where the rest of your research proposal is going to go, but I want to see that initial roadmap in this blog. So we're going to do a draft of the introduction for this week, and then we'll revise it further and add in your revised lit review the following week, and then build into methodology and methods and the discussion section to get through this proposal. So hopefully this gives you a little bit better picture of the kind of work we're going to start getting into. We'll take a look at a couple of complete research proposals as we head through the next few weeks and you draft this project. But you've been getting, over the semester, more and more focused on a specific idea. What started in project 1 with like potential research questions, but then you had to kind of rephrase over and over again. And some of you are still working on shrinking those research questions down to something manageable. Now is going to be leading into you being able to show, here's what I want to know, here's where this question is coming out of based on things that my discourse community are interested in. Here's how I'm going to research these questions, and here's how that research will contribute to this overall conversation in the field. So we're getting there. Take it piece by piece. Thanks for sticking with me through this long video. There's a lot of components to this project, so I want to make sure that you feel confident about where you're headed.